All right, let's do that again. My mic wasn't on, so sorry. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley in snowy Medford, Oregon. I'm Kimberly Hawkins, Spiritual Director here, and we're so glad you decided to join us for our Sunday celebration. We are an inclusive, progressive spiritual community dedicated to teaching spiritual tools to transform personal lives and help make a world that works for everybody. And we welcome you no matter where you may happen to be on your own personal spiritual path. With me this morning is Rev Michelle Ariano, who will be doing our invocation and reading. And our lovely musicians this morning are Anton Miserak and Laura Berryhill, who now have our opening song.
Good morning. We're going to welcome you this morning in music with a song by our colleague Karen Drucker with additional words by Carol Huntley. For years I would talk about how I wanted to change the world, but I always left it up for someone else to do. Then I finally realized I needed to take a stand, and that by changing my thinking I could change my life, and that's how I could change the world. Let there be peace, I am a stand for peace. Let there be love, I am a stand for love. Let there be joy, I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. Let there be peace, I am a stand for peace. Let there be love, I am a stand for love. Let there be joy, I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. Let there be peace, I am a stand for peace. Let there be love, I am a stand for love. Let there be joy, I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. We are making a new world now. We are making a new world now.
Good morning. Rev Michelle Ariano here. I'm grateful to be the practitioner for the day, and I'm going to open us in prayer. So we take a deep breath in, feel that life force, and release it, just becoming present to this moment, knowing that it is all good. It is all good, it is all God, and it is all now. And as we move through this service, as we move through this day, we know that we are connected, that we are one. And the beauty of who each of us are is unconditional love, unconditional peace, unconditional oneness. And as we continue to move into those spaces, we feel our connection. We feel our connection to each other. We feel our connection to this earth. We feel our connection to the universe, knowing that we are infinite beings in this human experience. And what a beautiful day it is to know this, knowing that this service is right and perfect, as our beautiful Rev Kimberly speaks in her most divine way, knowing that it is good, that it is God, that it is peace, and that it is now. I release this into the universe, and together we say, and so it is, and so it is. I am grateful to be here today, and I'm also grateful to be speaking on this topic of nonviolence. And so what I decided to do is just do a potpourri of quotes and letting some of the greats speak through me today as we celebrate this day of being here and being together. So the first quote I have is from Martin Luther King, and I actually have a couple from him. I think a culture of nonviolence will help create the condition where poverty is unacceptable, where racism is way behind us and not something that we have to deal with on a frequent basis. Well, where militarism and violence are reduced almost to non-existence. Another one from Martin Luther King: non-violence is a powerful and just weapon, which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. It's a sword that heals. And the last one from Martin Luther King: nonviolence means avoiding not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. You not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate a man. And then the last quote that I wanted to do was our beautiful new shero from the Inauguration, Amanda Gordon. And she really sent waves through social media, through news, her eloquence and how she presented her poem and her words that were so incredibly touching to each of us. I just want to say a little short part of what she spoke about, which fits divinely into this nonviolence talk today. To compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. As we lift our gaze, not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say, this is true. That even as we've grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tired. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious. And so it is.
Thank you so much, Reverend Michelle. And I chose that same excerpt from my talk, so you're going to hear it again. Good. She is amazing, amazing. All right, we go now back to our musicians, Anton and Laura.
This is a song by a friend of mine, Eddie Watkins Jr. It's not one of his better known songs, but it's one that I used to play harmonica with him, and it's on his CD, the two of us playing together. What Would Jesus Do?
We're all in it together, it's true as they say. Still confusion abounds as we seek the right way. I wonder sometimes what this world's coming to, and try to imagine what would Jesus do. Saying all is well and it's as it should be is easy when things are all pretty and clean. But when I think things aren't happening how they're supposed to, I try to imagine what would Jesus do. What would he say about the homeless and hungry? What would he do about the beggar and thief? What would he say to the drunk and drug addict and the young girl selling herself on the street? Do you think he'd see heavenly perfection underneath their earthly shell? Through the veil of confusion to what is true, I believe that's what Jesus would do. If we could all embrace our Christ presence and learn to forgive 10 times and again, and in each face see their divine essence, we can change the world without from within, and realize heavenly perfection underneath each earthly shell. Through the veil of confusion to what is true, I believe that's what Jesus would do. I believe that's what Jesus would do.
How lovely. Thank you so much, Laura and Anton. I'd like to begin by asking you all a question. Are you a giraffe or are you a jackal? A giraffe is a very gentle animal. It has the largest heart of any of our land mammals. Actually, in fact, a giraffe has 3 hearts, a fact I didn't learn until this week. On the other hand, a jackal is a very skilled hunter, a predator animal. And so these 2 animals represent 2 sides of a continuum of how we might be with each other. The giraffe represents compassionate, heartfelt communication, whereas the jackal symbolizes competition, language that is judging, critical, blaming, moralizing, accusing. And I first learned about this symbology by taking workshops, 2 workshops actually, from the amazing psychologist, author, teacher named Marshall Rosenberg, who developed a process called nonviolent communication. Marshall has passed away in 2015, but his legacy, called NVC, or nonviolent communication, lives on. Many teachers using this, and it's a process that can help our communication, whether it's with ourselves, with our partners, families, friends, workplace, and really among nations as well. So the title of my talk this morning is Nonviolence and Me. I chose this partly because we're about to enter into the 64-day period called Season for Nonviolence, which started back in 1998 at the United Nations. And it's the 64-day period between January 30th and April 4th, which are the anniversary dates of the assassination deaths of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, 2 beautiful souls who modeled nonviolent protests to make changes in our society and in the countries where they lived. Other people have also worked with this model of nonviolence. 2 people that come to mind are Cesar Chavez and Nelson Mandela. So the idea behind the Season of Nonviolence is to teach us that each of us can help promote a more peaceful world by making choices that are nonviolent in our speech, in our action. What a beautiful concept. And so, how do we become more like giraffes? How do we become more loving and compassionate and gentle in our communications? Marshall Rosenberg developed a 4-step process. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I think it deserves revisiting because certainly if you think about jackal language, judging, critical, blaming, harsh, we've had an awful lot of that the past several years in this country, particularly in our political realm, and how different things could be if we could learn to behave and to speak like giraffes. So this 4-step process begins with an observation. And I'm going to share with you an example that I remember Marshall giving when I was being taught by him. And I think it's remarkable that I even remember this example because I think it must have been at least 10 years ago that I was with him in his workshops, maybe 12 years. So here's the example. Imagine that a mom is coming back from work at the end of the day. She's picked up her children from school, and she's tired. And when they enter the house, the 3 children in a race to the kitchen to get a snack or the bathroom or the Wii, whatever they're looking for, their video games, they enter the door and they just fling things, their backpack, their books, their coats, all over the living room floor. Now, the mom has tried very often to get them not to do this, to no avail. So this particular day when it happens, she could choose to be a jackal. She could use to yell at them, and that would be partly understandable. We've all been jackals at some point or another, I'm sure, in our lives as parents, spouses, whatever. Instead, she chooses to behave and to speak like a giraffe. So she waits until she's calm, and she sits the children down, and she practices step 1 of nonviolent communication. She makes the observation to the children, I notice when we come in from after school that you all scatter your belongings all over the living room. Now, mind you, that's a neutral observation. She doesn't say, I notice you guys are slobs. I notice you guys don't behave the way I've asked you to 10 million times, which would be accusing, which would be more jackal language. She simply makes the neutral observation, I notice you're leaving your things scattered about the floor. Step number 2, I always get this confused if it's feelings or observations. Step number 2 is feelings. She says to them, when you do this, I feel angry. Now again, notice, sometimes what goes under the guise of feelings is not pure feelings. For instance, if she had said, when you do this, I feel like you don't respect me, or I feel like you are just bad children, or, something accusatory, which isn't really feeling. And she doesn't say, when you do this, you make me angry. That, again, is accusing. It's blaming or judging. She simply says, when you do this, I feel angry. Step number 3. Step number 3 is a need. So in this case, what she says to them, I have a need for order and harmony in my home. And step number 4 is a request. So she's made an observation, stated how she feels, stated what her need is, and then the request. Now, a request means a request. It doesn't mean a demand, and it doesn't mean that you have to have the person obey. A request is made with the idea that you're hoping that they'll be willing to say yes, but you will accept if they say no. So the request in this instance is, children, would you be willing, if I put a basket here and there are hooks over here where you first come in, would you be willing to take a moment when you first come home to put all your belongings in this basket and to hang up your coat or sweater or jacket here? And then she waits for them to answer. And a dialogue can ensue, hopefully, that is nonviolent. Now, once again, you don't stay attached to this is absolutely going to work. But I think you can see that the chances of having a civil conversation and reaching an understanding are much greater if you approach the situation as a giraffe than as a judging, angry, condemning jackal. And you're going to get backlash. You're going to get really fight back instead. Coincidentally, both Rev Michelle and I have been taking a class this month online with the amazing Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. And Pema, as I spoke about earlier this month, is teaching about kleshas. It's the Tibetan word for emotions that cause pain. Kleshas, it's spelled Kleishas. And she talks about how these painful emotions, for instance, anger or irritation, are fueled by the stories we create about the feelings. So going back to this example of the mom, when she gets frustrated and angry that the children can't just clean up after themselves and she comes home tired and she's going to make dinner, but she's got this mess on her hands. If the story she creates in her head is these children are just never going to get it, they're not well behaved, or the story she creates is they don't care about me at all. They just care, they're selfish, and she makes these judgments. It makes her anger fester and be fueled and be greater. And then the Buddhists teach that if we're attached to that story, if we think it's true and we're not willing to let go of it, that's another word in Tibetan called a shenpa. A shenpa is being attached to that story and not wanting to look at another possibility. So the solution, according to the Buddhists, is to get quiet, to sit in meditation, perhaps to journal. What am I feeling? How did I get triggered? What's my trigger is a good one to look at. And then what's the story I'm telling myself? And so creating a new story is one way to lessen the power of that painful emotion. Because let's face it, when we're angry, it's not only unpleasant for the people that we're spewing at about our anger, but it's unpleasant for us. We are not at peace, right? So the story she might create is, these are children. It's natural for them to just come in and race to the kitchen, and they can be encouraged to form a different habit. Wow. So this is really all about this idea of nonviolence in me. It's really about creating peace in our hearts, because we all know that that's where peace begins. You may be familiar with the beautiful writing of the 6th century BC Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. I love this piece. If there's to be peace in the world, there must be peace among nations. If there's to be peace among nations, there must be peace among the cities. If there's to be peace among the cities, there must be peace among neighbors. And if there's to be peace among neighbors, there must be peace in the home. And finally, if there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. Yeah, our hearts. Last week I spoke about the idea of marinating in divine love. Marinating, this idea that, when we tenderize meat, we put it in a marinade. And the marinade works to soften, to tenderize the tough spots. And if we marinate in divine love, what we're doing is we are allowing the knowledge that we are love incarnate, that God is love, that God is all around us. That's what we're here to express. It can soften our heart and allow us to become more giraffe-like. I also talked about developing the consciousness, like what consciousness would I need to develop to be and to see the desired result in my life? If I want peace, how do I develop that consciousness of peace? So these are some of the practices that I think Marshall Rosenberg would agree with, and certainly the Buddhists like beloved Pema Chodron would agree with. Now, another aspect of NVC, nonviolent communication, as Rev. Michelle spoke in one of her quotes, nonviolence is about practicing nonviolence towards others and also practicing nonviolence internally. So there is something in NVC called self-empathy. How do we develop self-empathy? How do we change our self-talk that's judging and condemning and harsh to more giraffe-like, compassionate self-talk? One author talks about emotional hygiene. Most of us, when we prepare to go out for the day, practice good physical hygiene. We take a shower, we brush our teeth, we put on clothes in a neat fashion, right? But how many of us practice emotional hygiene, cleansing and purifying our emotions, our heart, our mind? And once again, the best way we can do this is to get quiet, to get still, perhaps to journal. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? What's the story I'm telling myself? How can I shift that instead to be tenderhearted towards myself and towards others? What are my thoughts and what are my needs, right? What are my feelings, my needs, and my thoughts? Watching our chief medical officer this week be interviewed, Dr. Anthony Fauci, I commented to a couple people that I bet he's a meditator. I have no idea if that's really true, but what I've noticed about him is his equanimity. He has said in interviews this week that he's grateful to be able to be speaking more about science and informing people about how we can make ourselves safe during the pandemic. But one interviewer I watched asked him to comment on what happened within the former administration when people were asked to do things that they didn't agree with, that they didn't believe in. Because this happened, to many of them. And instead of commenting, instead of criticizing, what Fauci said was, so-and-so, the interviewer's name, you're asking me to make a judgment, to criticize. I'm not willing to do that. Here's what I can tell you going forward. Here's what we're going to do. And he did it without any visible sign of upset, of frustration. He was just completely calm and loving. Dr. Fauci was acting like a giraffe. And I think that's a beautiful model for all of us. It is so easy in this climate we've been in to get angry, to get upset, to criticize, and really it upsets us and it does nothing to create peace in our outer relationships. So I just want to thank Dr. Fauci for his model. And of course, our president right now is doing similar things. Another aspect of this emotional hygiene, cleansing our mind and our feelings and our emotions, has to do with comparing. A lot of times when we get hard on ourselves, we compare ourselves to others. We can do this with our children too. We can do this with our friends. Why can't you behave like so-and-so? So I think that's another aspect where we can cleanse our thoughts and our self-judgments. Ian Van Sant said, comparison is an act of violence against the self. We are here as unique, precious, awesome beings, unique incarnations of the one life that is God, that is Spirit. And so if we marinate in divine love, we recognize our unique constellation of talents and gifts, and we determine that we will live to the highest and best ability of our talents and our gifts. So once again, the stories we create in our head fuel our painful emotions. We need to be able to recognize our triggers and to recognize that the people who trigger us did not install our buttons, they merely pushed them, correct? Another example of the advantage of giraffe-like communication, according to Pema Chodron, is peaceful demonstrations are often more effective. They're often given more respect and attention in a positive way than violent demonstrations. And we surely saw an example of this on the day that we had the attempted coup, really, at our Capitol. People reacted against, not listening for. If people have a message to deliver, how much more effective it is if it's delivered in a peaceful manner. Again, the example this week that struck me, as it did Rev Michelle, was this incredible, amazing 22-year-old youth poet laureate, Amanda Gorman. If you have not, I imagine most of you have heard her speech, her poem by now that she delivered at President Biden's inauguration. But boy, if you haven't, I encourage you to listen. And I actually chose the same excerpt that Rev Michelle chose, but I think it bears repeating. This is really what nonviolence and unity is all about. And so she wrote, "We lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division." And so, my friends, I think we have an opportunity, especially with this new administration and with President Biden's call for unity. This democracy is based on nonviolent communication. It's based on communication, on expressing different views, on having respectful arguments, really, even about that. It's based on 3 branches of government with a check on a balance of powers. But it's based on free speech, but it's not based on jackal speech, on blaming, criticizing, condemning. And so I also appreciated some of the things that President Biden said in his inaugural address, emphasizing unity, that unity is our path forward. He said we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America when we've acted together. Ah, those are nice musical words to me. He said that disagreements must not lead to disunion. You know, we can disagree with somebody and communicate about it without thinking that we're separate and condemning. So I want to read one more excerpt from Joe Biden's inauguration speech, which I think speaks to nonviolent communication. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts. There again, the idea of the big-hearted giraffe, of the marinating in love. If we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. And I read this not to polarize us any further. I think these are principles that Republicans and Democrats alike can embrace. And I know there are many on most sides of the aisle who think it's high time that we engage in civil discourse, in giraffe-like respectful language and discussions. A couple other suggestions for this week as I wrap up this message this morning. A couple weeks ago, I shared with you Marianne Williamson's suggested morning prayer, which is, Dear God, I open my heart to you. Please enter where you already abide. Try that. It's a beautiful way to start the day. It's a beautiful way to allow our hearts and the divine heart to lead us, to guide us in our, not reactions, but responses, in our language, in our interactions with each other. One more suggestion. Our lead practitioner in our community, Maggie Covarrubias, and I have decided to offer a book study in February on the newest book from beloved author Neil Donald Walsh, who lives here in the Rogue Valley in Ashland. The book is entitled The God Solution, The Power of Pure Love. We'll be doing that book study, free by the way, for anyone who'd like to join us, starting on Sunday afternoon, February 7th, the first Sunday in February, running for those 4 weeks in February, the month of love. And I think you will find this another tool in shaping this nation of ours, our personal lives, our family lives, the life in our home, in our neighborhoods, in our cities, our nations, and in the world, to let love guide the way. As NVC and as Lao Tzu have taught us, peace begins right here in our own hearts. Let's remember the 4 steps of nonviolent communication. Make a pure, non-judgmental observation. Express your feeling. Express your need for whatever it is, order, harmony, goodness, peace. And finally, make a request, unattached to whether the request is honored or not. Would you be willing to? Would you please do such and such? Letting go of a story that we may have come up with in our head about separation and judgment, and creating new stories that honor the divine in each and every other person, whether we agree with them or not. And finally, I'd like to end with another brief excerpt from dear Amanda Gordon's beautiful poem, The Hill We Climb. She spoke on Inauguration Day, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. Love becomes our legacy. Let's go into prayer. I recognize that there is one power, one presence that is absolute, unconditional love. It is the source from which each of us has sprung. It is that creative impulse to create new forms, to express itself in greater ways. It is that essence of who each of us is. That love, that source, that power permeates all of life. It is what we are intended to express during our time on earth. It is the knowledge that we are one, that we are meant to live in unity and to work together. It is the ability to stand in someone else's shoes and see their point of view rather than condemning and criticizing. It is the heart of compassion, the big heart of the giraffe rather than the judgmental point of view of the jackal. And so I know for each one of us this week, as perhaps we take this 64-day period called the season of nonviolence to focus on having nonviolent actions and words, even when we feel emotions coming up, to take the time to get still, to become self-respective, self-contemplative, and conscious of what's going on, to take a look at our story, that we are supported by this love that permeates us. We are supported by this power that surrounds us, that applauds us, that guides us, that it is possible to communicate with love, to communicate from a knowledge that we're one and not a false belief that we're separate, that things are hopeful, not hopeless. And so I affirm and pray that this 64-day period, as we also embrace a new administration in our government, perhaps a new way of collaboration across the aisle, a new way of expressing ourselves from a heart and not from a place of judgment, that we truly can create peace in our hearts, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, our cities, in our nation, and in the world. A legacy of love that we can enjoy and pass to our children and our grandchildren. I know this week, as we commit to this, we are supported, that the universe moves in to support us, to guide us, to help us, to heal us. As each of us heals our own hearts, we help heal the world. I give thanks for this opportunity to speak these truths. I give thanks for this movement that is so evidenced now by so many voices, including Amanda Gorman, including our new president, our vice president, and that each of us can become that voice for peace, for unity, for goodness. And so in gratitude for all of this, in gratitude for each one watching, for each one committing during this season of nonviolence, for all the beautiful leaders of the past who proved what a powerful tool nonviolence is, I release this prayer into the heart of God, the law, which always says, yes, my beloveds, it is done, and we say together, and so it is. Amen. Thank you. We go now once again to Laura Berryhill and Anton Mizarek.
We're going to play a song called Autumn Rains. I wrote it some dozen years ago back at Unity Village at the onset of a week-long storm. 1, 2, 3. gama pa, ma pa ga re sa, ni sa gama pa, ma pa sa, ni da pa, da pa ma, pa ma ga, da pa, ni sa gama pa, ma pa ga re sa, ni sa gama pa, ma pa sa, ni da pa, da pa ma, pa ma ga, da pa, din na na tin na, 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 din na da.
Thank you once again, Anton and Laura. How beautiful. It's the time now in our service where we speak about sacred giving, which is the opportunity to become conscious of the good that we receive from the universe and through many channels, and the ability to decide to share a portion of it to where we're spiritually fed. So we invite you to make a gift to Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley. There are several ways you can do that. But first, let's do our giving affirmation together, if you will. It'll be up on the screen in a minute if it's not already. From the love of pure spirit within me, I bless this gift. I send it forth to heal and bless and prosper. It is evidence of my faith and my belief. It does great work in the world, and it returns to me multiplied abundantly, and so it is. So several ways to give to CSL RV. You can mail a check to P.O. Box 1458, Medford, Oregon, 97501. Our website also has a donate button, so you go to www.cslroguevalley.org, and you can pay with a credit or debit card there. You can also set up an ongoing, recurring tithe or donation if you like. Thank you. Thank you for your continued support for our community and all that we offer, and our vision of helping to make a world that works for everybody. A few announcements. There is still time the last week to join Reverend Michelle's Meditation is More Than You Think class, which is awesome. It's a vibrant class. She is a beautiful teacher. And how timely in giving the talk today about cultivating equanimity and peace. This is the way to do it. So you can sign up on our website or email her. If you get our newsletter, you can email her or just email cslroguevalley at gmail.com, cslroguevalley@gmail.com to sign up for the meditation class, which is Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. on Zoom. Let's see. Also, you can sign up, as I mentioned, for our book study on Neale Donald Walsch's book. It is going to be exciting because Neale Donald Walsch has offered to come on to Zoom calls for CSL that are doing book studies. So I'm hoping to get him to join us one of the last book study sessions to discuss and answer questions on his book, The God Solution, The Power of Pure Love. That will be meeting starting at 1 in the afternoon, Sunday, February 7th on Zoom. Again, email us if you'd like to join. If you'd like to receive our newsletter, which comes out, our e-newsletter each Wednesday, you can sign up for it here on Facebook. And let's see, morning spiritual practice calls continue at 9 a.m. Monday and Wednesday, and Thursday evening at 7 p.m., a great way to connect. And I forgot to mention that a week from today, we have our annual community meeting. There's a beautiful slideshow we're going to show you. We'll elect our board members. We'll talk about the year past and where we're headed. And we love your input of what you'd like to see us offer for this coming year, especially while we're still practicing social distancing. Reverend Linda Rapon will be our guest speaker next week, but I will be joining you all for our annual meeting at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I think that's it for our announcements. We go now once again to Anton and Laura for our closing song.
We're going to close with a song in honor of Mahatma Gandhi, written by V.D. Pulaskar for Mahatma Gandhi to use at his rallies. He used them for the last 18 years of his life. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram is the song. Ishvara, Allah Tere Nam. Ishvara, the Hindu word for God. Allah, the Muslim word. Tere Nam, these are your names. So it doesn't matter how we address spirit. Sabako for everybody. Sanmati De Bhagavan. Spirit gives us this clear-sighted thinking that is that thinking, that state of consciousness where we take a breath before we react, which is the foundation of nonviolence. Song for Mahatma Gandhi. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Ishvariyala Tere Nam, Sabako Sanmati De Bhagavan. Ishvariyala Tere Nam, Sabako Sanmati De Bhagavan. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Bhaja Piyare tu 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 Sitaram.
How beautiful to honor the life of Mahatma Gandhi. And I would like to recognize, before we close right now, our Sunday crew. Randy Clark was our producer-director this morning for the very first time. Bill Miner is out of town. We also have Vivian Lacey on camera, Shannon Schnibbe on our slides. And let's see, who am I missing? Tom Frederick, our sound person. And just very grateful. And we have, we're training a new group of volunteers for the Skeleton Sunday crew. So Joe Walter has been here with us also today. We're very, very grateful to everyone who has helped make these broadcasts possible. So I leave you today with another few words from the poet laureate, youth poet laureate, Amanda Gorman, who said at the end of her poem on Inauguration Day, "The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're willing to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." Let's be brave enough, my friends, to be the light, to be the love. Namaste. Till next time.